Thank you for attending today's webinar regarding Country Club Way. My name is Laura Kaifas and I'm with the Tempe's Neighborhood Services Office. I'll be helping out with hosting today. Today our presenters are going to be Chase Wallman, Transportation Planner with the City of Tempe, Rebecca Rothman, Director of Public Art, Ray Carranza, our Design Consultant with HDR, Jason Harrington, our Landscape Designer with Harrington Planning and Design, and Bobby Zokait, the artist who's been working with us to incorporate art into the design. Sorry for butchering your name. Today's meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the website tempe.gov/country clubway path. Usually takes about a day or so. Before we get started, some important information on how to participate. After the presentation, we'll have a question and answer period. You can either type your question in the chat or Q&A section, and I'll read them for the team to answer, or you can raise your hand and I'll unmute you so you can ask the question yourself. If the question is related to a specific slide, you might want to jot that down to facilitate the discussion. To raise your hand, find your name on the participant list and hover over it. The hand icon will appear. Click on that. If you're on your cell phone, please click the chat bubble. We'll skip that part. There aren't going to be too many raised hands because it's only Ann. The comment period for this topic will be open till July 7th. As a reminder, the comments from the chat will not be logged as official comments. To submit an official comment, please visit tempe.gov/forum. I think that covers it. Chase, over to you.
Thanks, Laura. And good morning, Ann, and if any other attendees are joining us today, thanks for taking the time on your Saturday morning to review the 60% design plans for the Country Club Way Bike and Ped Improvement Project. Before I hand it over to the design team to go over the 60% design, and I know you're probably familiar with the project background, so we'll go over this real briefly. The project stretches from Warner Road to the US 60 pedestrian bridge. It starts on the west side of ASU Research Park with a 1-mile multi-use path and adjacent equestrian trail, which will have lighting, landscaping, and public art in it. And then all the improvements north of Elliot Road are going to be the on-street improvements, like the bike lane striping, shared lane markings, buffered bike lanes, as well as ADA improvements to the directional ramps, some improved crosswalks along the project corridor with the striping, and new pedestrian signal at Warner Road and traffic calming elements. The project history was first identified in 2015 in Tempe's Transportation Master Plan. You're probably very familiar with these images. These are the annotated kind of plan views where we asked in 2017 during our first round of public meetings for this project for residents to draw or write their comments onto the plan views of our preliminary designs. So in 2016, that was part of the process where we were awarded $82,500 for preliminary design grant funding to develop those preliminary designs. We held those public meetings in 2017, and obviously we had a good idea of what the project costs were going to be for the corridor and how we needed to phase the project due to the overall cost that was projected for the project. So in 2018, we secured federal grant funding, just over $2.6 million from Federal Highway Administration funding to fund the construction of the project from Warner Road to US 60. And in 2019, we hired HDR as our design consultant for the project to develop the final designs, the plans, specs, and estimates. And we kicked off that design in 2019, held our first round of public meetings in 2020 in September, and that was on refined preliminary design plans where we asked the public for their feedback on design priorities as well as preferred alternatives for the corridor. After that, we gathered that feedback, and as well as the feedback from internal departments and other city commissions such as sustainability and transportation commissions. We gathered that feedback and refined the design and came back to the public in February of this year, and that was on our 30% design set. And from there, we gathered further feedback and we are presenting what the design iteration is from gathering the feedback from that 30% design today. So right now, this design benchmark would be the 60% design. At that 30% design meetings, we had 47 people attend the virtual meetings and received 56 unique survey responses. And below are the cross-section views of the 3.5-mile corridor for the different unique segments, which Ray and Jason will be going over in more detail when I hand over the PowerPoint to them. But also during this time, I wanted to mention that the city undertook an RFQ process to select a public artist for this project. So getting an artist early on in the design process to be able to integrate their designs into the overall design package for the project. So through that competitive process, through a selection panel of Tempe residents and stakeholders, Bobby Sakaitis, who will be presenting his art concept today, was selected to join the design team. So he got picked up around the 30% design phase, and he'll be presenting his conceptual ideas today with the design team. Additional elements that were seen as common themes with those 56 responses were an overall desire for more shade in the project corridor, drinking fountains, but not only drinking fountains, but drinking fountains also accommodate dogs as well. So having kind of a dog bowl on the bottom integrated into the drinking fountain. Landscape that was native and drought tolerant, and also landscaping that wasn't going to be messy or otherwise present a hazard to bike users or any other users on the pathway. Feedback from the public, as well as when we presented to the Sustainability Commission, there was a real desire as well for high quality shade. So not only having the canopy shade overhead, but introducing more shade that you would benefit from in the afternoon. So having those vertical shade elements at our rest nodes as well. So that was a consideration that we continue to look at as we develop from the 30 to 60%. Separation from vehicles from bicyclists and pedestrians. So having that separation or buffer space. And then the top 3 priorities that were ranked were the bike lane striping and multi-use path, traffic calming, and then landscaping to round out the top 3 priorities from that previous round of public meetings. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Ray Carranza, who will be presenting our 60% design plans.
Thank you, Chase. Hello, everyone. My name is Ray Carranza, design consultant PM for this project. For the 60% design, what we have for you is a series of videos that will show the various design elements overlaid onto an aerial image. And then on the aerial, you'll see various colored shapes and elements that depict our 60% design for this project. And as the video plays, I'll go ahead and describe the proposed elements you're seeing as we move through the corridor, starting from the south end at Warner. Next slide, please. So the first segment we're going to look at is the Warner to Elliot segment. And before we start the video, we'll focus on this area first. There's a new pedestrian crosswalk that will be installed across Warner. The crosswalk will also add 2 new signal poles with pedestrian push buttons. A new 10-foot sidewalk is proposed between Kenwood Lane and the new pedestrian crossing as well. And as you cross the Warner pedestrian crossing, it will lead you into one of 4 shade node structures that we have proposed for the project. And that's what you see there in that kind of the yellow circular area. That's the shade node. The shade nodes will provide opportunities for people to sit and rest, and we'll have more information on what those shade structures look like in this presentation. And with that, Chase, let's go ahead and roll the video, please. So as we move north from Warner, this is the start of our multi-use and equestrian path segment. The equestrian path will be adjacent to the existing an existing block wall on the west side. Both equestrian and multi-use path will be 10-foot wide with landscaping on both sides of the path. Lights will be provided for the multi-use path and will be located in the landscaped area between the equestrian and multi-use path. There are 2 community connection points to the multi-use path. First one's at Buena Vista Drive, and the second one's at Citation Lane. And I believe the first community connection point we'll be passing here will be Buena Vista, right there. The path will be constructed within a 40-foot public utility easement, and both the equestrian and multi-use path will meander due to various above-ground utilities that we try to avoid. North of the citation connection point, we have our second shade node structure, and in this segment, we have our third shade node structure, which is located just south of Elliot Road. And as we approach Elliot, the equestrian path will end, and the multi-use path will connect to the existing sidewalk along Elliot Road. And there we're passing our third shade node structure, and then the multi-use path ends here at Elliot Road. There is a new driveway proposed at the north end, which will serve directly an existing maintenance facility and road at that location. The shade node, you can kind of see there at the bottom of the screen, that was moved since the 30% design to be further south. This shade node location also provided more room for maintenance vehicles to access their site. Next slide, please. For this next slide, we like to present the additional path elements that we're proposing for this project. So what we show here is some pictures of the amenities, some of the amenities and lighting elements that we're proposing. Starting with the three smaller pictures on the upper right-hand side. The one on that left is a drinking fountain. So it's not pictured here, but we, as Chase mentioned, we'll be pursuing drinking fountains that can accommodate dogs. We'll also have bike racks and or bike repair stations at the node structures. And for lighting along the multi-use path, we are planning to use solar energy. So the lights you see pictured here are solar lights. These will differ from the ones that we are proposing for this project. The ones for this project will utilize shorter poles with back shields to help reduce backlight. The lighting will also be designed to provide a tighter light distribution pattern, which will focus the light on the path itself to further reduce any potential for backlight. There are two areas where we are planning to use these pedestrian solar lights. First area is the Warner to Elliot segment that we just covered, and the second is north of Shutterfly Way to Western Canal. There's an existing multi-use path that we'll cover later in the presentation. Next slide, please. And at this time, I'll hand it over to Bobby, who will present our shade node art concept. Bobby?
Thanks, Ray. Hi, guys. My name is Bobby Zokaitis. I'm a sculptor working in Tempe. When they put the call out to hire an artist, it was fairly vague. They wanted to create a point of curiosity that was maybe educational. And so what I did was I looked at their designs, and these shade nodes are already circular. And one of the sketches actually has a 15-degree canopy, like they're triangles, which is very close to how a sundial functions. And so I proposed to turn these rest nodes into sundials. And this image is what the proposal for the floor dial, which is going to be actually a contemporary dial known as a spider dial. If you think of what you normally think of as a sundial, it has straight lines, and what you see in this image, all these squiggly lines, actually are calibrated so that this clock on the floor will tell the same time that your wristwatch does. It's called civil time. And The difference is that old clocks tell solar time, which then need to be calibrated through this thing called the equation of time, which is what's already embedded in the squiggly line here. And the nice thing about this is that the stylus, the pointer that's normally on a sundial, can be the central column of the shade structure. And we've decided that we're going to do this design with an outdoor terrazzo application. So it's going to be a polyaccurate cement, probably 3 tones with aluminum lines in it. If we go to the next slide. So then the other dials that we're going to put on the shade structure are going to be vertical dials. These have a long history of being integrated into architecture, and we're going to actually use the vertical shade screens as the opportunity to have these vertical dials. This image is set up so it's going to be cut from a 3/8 inch piece of plate steel, most likely, and all of these rectangles are going to be cut out of it using a CNC machine. And this clock will be accurate within 5 minutes, is what all of those lines are, the 5-minute lines, with a small stylus that protrudes out. There are 4 of these vertical dials. There's one on the south side, there's one facing southwest, one facing northwest, and one facing north. So the whole assemblage, if we go to the next slide, this is the sketch of the whole assemblage. It'll actually have 4 vertical dials and then 1 on the floor. And there's some playful things that we're doing with the benches and the numbers. So the whole thing will be this super integrated clock piece, I guess. And then Ray, I guess that's back to you.
Thank you, Bobby. I guess for the next slide, we'll hand it over to Jason. He's going to discuss kind of like the landscaping elements at the shade node structures and also along the path. Jason?
Great, thanks, Ray. So our segment along the ASU Research Park from Warner to Elliot includes the parallel path of the soft surface, which is being referred to as an equestrian surface. Cyclists and joggers can still use it. And then a hard surface, which will be a concrete surface pathway. Along the path, we'll have these nodes that, as Bobby had described, have several learning opportunities, as well as having some green infrastructure elements as part of the concept. And there'll be some fixed individual seating at those nodes for comfort and rest and reorientation. For the landscape along the path, there are some existing plant materials along the ASU corridor. A lot of those plants will be protected in place. Things outside that 40-foot easement zone will be retained because they're part of ASU's campus property. Things that fall within our 40-foot zone that we can protect, we certainly will. Others that need to be removed or replaced as a result of the new infrastructure being proposed will be augmented with some additional landscaping. One of the things that we had heard in the previous studies elements during the public meeting was to provide shade for a lot of the people there who utilize the path. So we're augmenting that existing vegetation with additional shade tree canopies, which we've coordinated with the City of Tempe arborist to help select low maintenance, low water use, and plants that have a seasonal interest as well. Next slide. The plants that we were coordinating with the arborist include willow acacia, ghost gum eucalyptus, desert willow, lava variety, which is a darker purple bloom, and some low maintenance ground cover things that don't have any thorns or have any protrusions from a safety standpoint. From a crime prevention standpoint, they're very low to the ground plant material that create greater visibility for people who utilize the path. So there's no hidey places for anything like that. But we've selected the plant materials also that are very low water use to help complete our green infrastructure concept along the corridor itself as well. With that, I'll turn it back to Ray.
Thank you, Jason. So the next video segment we'll be looking at is the Elliot to Western Canal segment. And before we start the video, we'll focus on this intersection since we also have a lot of information to cover here. We are installing a new crosswalk on the west leg of the intersection. There is an existing crosswalk on the east leg as well as the north leg of the intersection. It's difficult to see here in the plot, but these are grayed out since they are existing out there, and they will remain in place when our project comes in. Modifications to the existing traffic signal will include push button poles on the northwest corner and southwest corner, and also a bike push button on the northwest corner of the intersection. The striping concept here has changed from what we presented previously, from a cycle track to buffered bike lanes. The reason for the change was due to the cycle track configuration not providing the adequate turning movements for trucks wanting to turn right on northbound Shutterfly Way. Another reason was for the change was that trucks would encroach into incoming lanes due to that cycle track configuration. So therefore, we kind of switched to a bike lane striping option since it provided the room needed for large trucks turning right on northbound Shutterfly. At the northwest corner of the intersection, the ramp will be reconstructed to provide directional ramps and also to provide any impacts to an existing transmission pole located on that northwest corner. Chase, let's go ahead and roll the video, please. So as we move north from Elliot Road, Shutterfly Way would be striped as buffer bike lanes, as I mentioned. There would be no on-street parking provided along Shutterfly, which is consistent with the current parking restrictions there today. An evaluation of the existing street light levels was done along this section. So the minimum light levels were not being met, so new street lighting is proposed on both sides of Shutterfly Way. Now we're hitting, this is the existing multi-use path area. 12-foot wide, new lighting, new pedestrian path lighting similar to what's being proposed between Warner and Elliot will be proposed for this existing path. And then the existing multi-use path continues north and ties here at the existing pedestrian bridge over the Western Canal. Next slide, please. So in the next two slides, we'll be going over the various landscape elements that will be inside the existing right-of-way. For this project, we look for opportunities to introduce traffic calming elements in the corridor. The traffic calming measures proposed include raised medians and also curb extensions, which will help promote the feeling of the roadway narrowing and which will help in turn slow down traffic. These traffic areas are planned to be landscaped. And now I'll hand it over to Jason to discuss those landscape improvements. Jason?
Thanks, Ray. These bump out areas for the planter spaces will utilize the same plant materials that we've identified for use in the previous corridor segment. Again, low water use, low maintenance plants. Our tree species has been selected so that we don't create any vertical obstructions for either the pedestrians or the bicycle and vehicle users along the corridor. So they'll have a more columnar or upright form to them and can be limbed up to make sure that we create that height clearance per City of Tempe standard requirements. We'll do ground level plantings that include ground covers and accents, again, low maintenance plants so that we're not out trimming and cutting them back to fit their area. They'll be selected to fill the space with their mature size. And again, there'll be low water use plants so that they minimize impacts to the environment. Another opportunity for green infrastructure that we're trying to embrace as part of this corridor segment. There's another slide coming up that'll show you a different type of configuration for an in-ground median planting. This one is just south of Guadalupe. There's another area near Baseline with a similar configuration. Again, it's a traffic calming feature that promotes shade canopy so we can minimize urban heat island as well. Again, low water use plant material, sensitivity to plant obstructions from the roadway users as well. So we'll be very cautious with our plantings and making sure that it's the appropriate plants for the right conditions.
Thank you, Jason.
Yep.
The next video segment we're going to be looking at is the Warner Canal to Guadalupe segment. So as we move north from the Western Canal, Country Club Way would be striped with buffered bike lanes. Let's go ahead and roll the video, please. Parking will be allowed on the east side only. This section had no changes since the previous our previous presentation. The existing sidewalk ramps in this segment are proposed to be reconstructed to be ADA compliant. There is residential block wall on both sides of this segment. And then as we approach the Guadalupe intersection, we have the two raised medians, as Jason mentioned, that will act as traffic calming measures, as previously mentioned. And then as we approach the intersection, green paint for bike lanes will be used at the north and south legs of the intersection. And at the Guadalupe intersection, relocation of the existing mast arm poles and additional push buttons will be added for ADA compliance. And one last thing to note is the sidewalk ramps in all four corners will be reconstructed to meet current city standards and for ADA compliance. So there'll be directional directional ramps on all four corners. Next slide, please. So the next video is the Warner to Watson segment. So as we play that video, as we move north from the Guadalupe intersection, Country Club Way will be striped as a bike lane, and parking will be allowed on both sides. Two striping options were presented at the last public meeting. A bike lane with parking and a shared lane with parking was presented. And based on the feedback received, the preference was to go with the bike lane alternative. There are 3 existing speed humps in this segment between Guadalupe and Watson, and the speed hump striping will be refreshed as part of this project. There's the video. And I also want to make note that in our last presentation, I incorrectly described the striping alternative in this section. So from Guadalupe to Watson, it is going to be a bike lane, striped as a bike lane with parking on both sides. Next slide, please. So our last video is the Watson to US 60 segment. And as the alignment will now turn east on Watson. And then as the video rolls, we have we're proposing a new striped crosswalk on the west side of Clark Drive. The crosswalk will provide pedestrian connectivity to Uplands Park on the north. And then this section will be striped as a shared lane with buffer. So, and our section here is at 40-foot wide, which is one of the most narrow section in our corridor. Residents along this section access Country Club Way via private driveways, and currently use the roadway for on-street parking. And parking will be allowed on both sides after the project. There are 3 existing speed humps in this segment, and the speed hump striping will be refreshed as part of this project. As we approach the El Paso crossing at Optimus Park, that crossing will still be maintained. The project will also refresh the striped crosswalk at Cornell Drive to connect pedestrians to Fuller Elementary. As I mentioned before, this is a 40-foot wide roadway segment, which is kind of the narrows in our section. The shared lane configuration will continue north. And then as we approach the baseline intersection, you'll see here coming up, we'll have curb extensions that will be used as a traffic calming measure. These curb extensions are proposed to be landscaped and will help slow down the traffic. And at the baseline intersection, relocation of the existing mast arm poles and additional push buttons will be added for ADA compliance. And then all four corners of the intersection will be reconstructed. The ramps will be reconstructed to meet current city standards and for ADA compliance. As we move north, continue north of baseline, we'll have a raised median north of the baseline for a traffic calming measure. Similar to the area south of baseline, residents access Country Club Way via private driveway and currently use the roadway for on-street parking, which will all be maintained for this project. And then our bike lane improvements end at Carson Drive, which you see here. And we have our fourth shade node structure proposed at Cole Park, which will have some minor landscaping, and then the circle area there is where we're planning to have the shade node structure. And with that concludes our project overview for the 60% design. And now I'd like to hand it back to Chase to discuss the next steps. Chase?
Thank you, Ray. For our next steps, we have this was our final public meeting for our third round of public meetings. So we'll have this open comment period open until July 7th. We'll finalize the 60% design plan, and we will plan to wrap up this design, the final plan specs and estimates, and get the project ready to bid in the late part of 2021. And keeping with that schedule, we would anticipate being able to start construction in the early part of 2022. So as I mentioned, the open comment period for this project is available until July 7th, and you would want to make those comments on our survey, which is at tempe.gov/forum. And then all of these same materials, the ability to kind of zoom in a little bit closer to these plan views and look at our landscape or public art concepts a little bit closer. All those project materials are available on the project web page, which is tempe.gov/countryclubwaypath. And then on the bottom right is my contact information if you have any other questions on the project. But other than that, thank you for taking time out of your Saturday morning to join us to review these 60% design plans for the Country Club Way project. And I think at this point, I will pass it over to Laura to open up our Q&A section.
Thanks, Chase. Okay, so if anyone has any questions, I can either unmute you or I can read your question if you want to put it in the chat. I see we have 2 attendees, so now's your opportunity. If you have anything you'd like to ask, anything you'd like clarified, we are here to answer. Okay, we have 2 folks. Matthew, I'm going to unmute you now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Just looking at that last part there by Cole Park, it looked like there was a crossing, some additional crossing paint going, east to west. But are we going to put any marking to cross to the park across Carson Drive? I didn't know if it was just not depicted on this, or I would suggest that would be a good thing to have because is a lot of traffic that crosses right there with bikes and pedestrians and skateboarders and whatnot, scooters.
Hi, this is Ray Carranza. Yes, we can add that. There is I believe that was recently reconstructed, the ramps at those at that location, like in 2018. So there is an area there where we can paint the sidewalk. So we'll take a look. I'll bring that to the design team and we can.
Okay.
That'd be something we can add.
I live near there, so I just see a lot of traffic coming out of the park on that bikeway.
Yeah.
Across Carson, and Carson at that point does not have stop signs, so traffic will continue, and I just think that having some visibility to that might help slow down traffic. There are the drainage there does kind of help slow it down a little bit, but there is no stop signs or anything else, so anything else like that might help with that.
Sure. No, thank you for your input.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you.
Matthew. Okay, Anne, I have unmuted you, so you go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, are you gonna put in dog bag dispensers along that? You got the dog water bowls. So that was one thing I was thinking about.
Yeah, that's something that we'll discuss as well. That was we haven't had a comment yet for those dog waste stations, but that's something that we could look at including as well. Talk with our maintenance folks.
Yeah, especially along the neighborhood streets, people are always complaining about dog poo. So getting in their front yard. And
Right.
on the plantings, are you gonna have water or are you gonna have irrigation to the plants? Or
I'll
is
take
it
that
gonna
one.
be?
Yeah, that's a low pressure, low volume drip irrigation system for all the plantings proposed.
Okay. That's about it. It looks pretty good.
Thank you for attending, Ann. Thanks for your comments.
Yep.
Anything else? Any other questions, comments?
Just my only comment is I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I think it's important to provide safe bikeways through the city, and I appreciate all the efforts in that direction.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, if we have no further questions, I guess we can end the meeting here. We'll stick around just in case someone does show up. But that does conclude anything we have to formally present. So if you feel like you want to leave, please feel free to do so. I think just Chase and I and probably Ray will stick around at this point. Thanks for coming.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.